Top of the morning, and welcome to the Screen Chronicles. I'm Colby, and with me, as always, is Steve feckin' Kuzic.
It's feckin' right.
It's feckin' right.
It's
That's
F-E-C-K right.
F-E-C-K. We're not swearing.
We are not swearing. YouTube.
That's right. Today we are talking about the new movie, The Banshees of Inisherin.
What is that? What the hell is that?
Well, it's a movie.
What the
It's a movie,
F-E-C-K
and
is that?
Banshees of Inisherin is a very interesting movie that I was not sure how I was going to like it before watching. And I'm very excited to talk about it with you, Steve, because I think there's a lot to talk about with this movie. I think there's a lot to break down. And if any of you have seen it, I'd love to hear your interpretations, because my feelings about this movie is that there are different ways to interpret it. I think the director has some things that he had in mind that he didn't necessarily reveal super obviously, kind of have to read into, which, Steve and I love movies like that. A little bit of an open end at the end to kind of let you come to your own conclusions about the whole film. So yeah, before we get going here, we're going to talk about a spoiler-free review of what we thought of the film before we dive into it.
The basic plot of it is these two guys on a small. It's a made up island. It's filmed in Ireland though. It's filmed on
a real island and on a coast of Ireland, and the name of the real island is similar. So the name of the island here is Inisherin, and it's filmed on Inishmore. Okay. So it's a fictional place. I went to that island in September, actually. But yeah, it is a place you can go where they filmed it, but they created kind of their own fictional island.
Yeah.
So,
and it's two friends. It's do you say just Patrick?
Parik. They say Parik.
Yeah. Parik and Colum. These two longtime friends. They're older men now. One of them's Colum is much more older than Patrick, but they're friends that have been doing stuff together, it seems like, for a long time. And then all of a sudden one day, Colum does not want to be friends with Patrick. And that's basically the general setup of the movie. But there's a lot more to it. We won't spoil it here in this brief talk, but if you just want to jump to our spoiler thoughts, you can look in the description below or the timestamp on YouTube or whatever to get there. But I feel like this is a good one for us to talk about too, just because we're two friends that have been together for a while now. And, man, I felt there were some moments in this. I was feeling some real fucking pain, some real fucking pain.
Some more,
and
some kind of ways.
Yeah. And I'd say that besides Joker, this is probably the most filmy film that we've talked about on the show. We've watched a bunch of other big filmy films, but
and that's why I said earlier, I wasn't sure going into it how I was going to like this movie, because it was one of those movies that, I usually, before I decide to watch a film, I did not see this in the theater. I saw it after it came out on HBO Max, which it did so relatively quickly for a movie that was in the theaters. Anyway, I go to the Rotten Tomatoes scores. I like the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Oftentimes I'm voting on the Rotten Tomatoes scores myself after I watch the movie. Cool. And it was a critic score of 97% and an audience score somewhere in the mid 70s. And, a lot of times when that happens, it's like, oh, is this movie going to be too artsy that only the critics really
like snob people? And another movie that's a film,
you know what I mean?
Filmy film, The Green Knight. But it was advertised.
That was a filmy
It's
film.
A cool movie.
The Northman as well. I
like The Northman. I love The Northman.
But it is a little bit filmy and artsy. So
filmy, artsy.
You have to give it that.
Yeah.
And so this movie, I wasn't sure.
If it's like an Academy Award, they're like, this movie's going to be an Academy. I'm normally like,
which,
boring.
By the way, this movie was just nominated yesterday for a buttload of Academy Awards.
Oh, yeah.
Including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Original Score, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. It could clean house. And it just won a bunch of the awards at the Golden Globes.
Oh, yeah?
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah. I think Colin Farrell won for his role in this. Colin Farrell, but it won a ton of awards. The only thing that won more awards was Everything Everywhere All at Once. which is also a
Another
great movie to
movie
watch.
that I didn't want to watch because everyone was talking about it. And they're like, well, did you use like Doctor Strange? Well, everywhere, all at once is better. What's a better version? Oscar.
And it
Like,
was, wasn't it?
I'm not gonna watch that feckin' movie now because of that.
I know.
But then I watched it,
So
and it was really good.
yeah, and I watched the trailer to Banshees of Inisherin and stuff, and I was like, it kind of looks like a slow movie. I do love the Irish accent. I'm 80% Irish myself in my heritage,
And like the other
and I love Irish
20%
things.
is like Scottish.
Yep, and Welsh. It's true. And I just went to Ireland, so I was like, okay, this kind of makes me want to watch it a little bit more now. The Irish people are just so friendly and awesome, and I love listening to the Irish accent. So that alone, maybe I'll enjoy this movie a little bit. And guess what? Most of the movie it's a lot of dialogue, but the dialogue is so darn good that I enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're someone who's seen it, you know, and if you haven't seen it, it's kind of at times it's like almost like a dark comedy. It's
Yeah,
that's
it really is.
also this drama. Because there's times that like I laugh about something, and then there's other times it's like, oh my god,
You feel pain.
killing me. I feel so bad for this character, and
Yeah.
um, but I was interested. I was really interested, and I think the mystery of why,
Yes.
because Column tells you why, but you're like, that's not the real
Right.
answer. That's not
But
this.
they hook you in with that. They hook you in
Yeah,
with that right away.
they hook you in
Because
with it.
the movie basically starts the first day that this guy decided to stop being friends,
Yeah,
and that's where you
it
start the
wastes no
story.
time. I think if they took time to set up that they're friends and gradually got there, and then the rest of the movie happened, I think it would have been boring. But it starts right off,
Yeah,
and you're like, all right, what? Like it's a mystery that you want to find out.
yeah.
And I would say, and that's something I liked about it. I felt interested the whole time. I felt like everything was like pulling me in. Well, at least for most of
Mm-hmm.
it, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, why? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, like halfway through, some other weird stuff starts to happen, like
It
really
gets
over
real
the top.
bizarre, really bizarre, real quick at a
Yeah,
couple
and
points.
you're like, what?
Because
Like,
I think like at first all this stuff feels really real, really down to earth.
and I was almost expecting it to turn into like a bro drama comedy more at some point, like an
I was
upbeat.
like expecting it to become heartwarming and like wholesome at some
Yeah,
point.
that's yeah, those
Um,
are words.
and
Like some good
a
bro
slight
moments. I thought were gonna
spoiler,
happen.
a slight spoiler here, ain't gonna happen in this movie. All right, ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. So if that is something
I,
you're expecting from it, it doesn't happen. And I would say I was still interested then though, because I was like, what's going to
yeah,
happen? And I would say really the only thing I didn't like was that the vague stuff that kept me interested. I feel like it should have been wrapped up a little bit more. For me personally, I would have just liked the ending wrapped up a little bit more with some closure. And a lot of people, who are like huge fans of this movie, like who are like this is a 10 out of 10. They're like, well, real life doesn't do that. And I'm like, well, I'm watching a
yeah.
movie. Like I already live real life. Like I want some
True,
closure
true,
so
but
I can go to bed and like be like, good.
I do and I don't. I agree. At first, when the movie ended, I had the same feeling you did because you were texting me while you were watching. Because I had watched it. I told
And
you, dude, you should watch this movie.
Yeah. And I knew
I think you
nothing
like
about it.
this.
I hadn't seen a trailer. I knew nothing about it other than you told me like two friends, one of them stops being friends with the other, and
Yeah.
and
Just
you told
kind of
me what it was
like,
called.
what kind of movie is this going to be? It's not going to have any
I really knew nothing
exciting
about it,
stuff happening.
which was kind of fun too
Um,
to go into with
yeah.
knowing nothing.
But I agree. I felt like a little bit like, I wish this movie didn't end here. I would like to see a little bit more closure. At the same time, I'm happy that they've left it up because I do like it when a movie sometimes doesn't give you, because I like how people might have the liberty to translate the movie to themselves in any way, in different ways. I think that's kind of a really cool thing about art is that it can be subjective if and I think this movie's definitely set it up for that. I think Joker. I compare this movie to Joker, by the way, because in Joker, there's a dim-witted character who at the beginning of the movie is kind of harmless and overall like a nice person, and they just more and more shit just happens to them, and just when you think
Yeah,
it can't get worse, it gets worse. Um, until you see what happens to their character, and there's a lot of similarities
that's a good
in
point.
that movie, and I think I felt a lot of the same ways. We can jump into more detail with that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Joker did the same thing at the end of the movie, where it had a very obscure ending scene that was interpreted a lot of different ways by different people. For Joker, is like, was it a dream? Was that just in his mind as he was dying? A bunch of different questions at that movie that I love to hear people's theories about. And I think sometimes if you do make the ending too specific, it would take that away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have the potential to do that. So I do kind of like how they ended it. I agree, though. I did feel at first, I was like, I don't want it to end here. I want to know. But I think that's the natural human tendency, is to like want to have the answer, to want to
Well,
have the complete
yeah, I
picture.
yeah, I guess I can't say anything without giving spoilers, but I would say that's really
Well,
my only
I think,
complaint. It's well shot,
yeah,
and for a movie that's really just about story and dialogue, like it felt like the time went by for me. I
yeah.
recently
It's a
watched
2 hour film, roughly.
yeah, I recently watched Elvis, and I think Elvis was 2 hours, maybe a little under 2 hours, and that was something periodically. It's a fast pace. I mean, bam, 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 like really highly edited, fast paced movie. It's interesting, and it got me listening to Elvis. But I wasn't super hooked. I watched it over the course of like a week. I
Yeah.
watched like 30 minutes. I paused, and I was like, I'm getting kind of bored now, and it feels like a good spot. I could stop. I'm gonna watch something else I like. But this one though, I mean, I went right through, and I was
I
just like,
was
oh, quick.
I was so into it. I was
Yeah.
like, it was a movie I did not want to look away from the screen. It did its job that way, and I watched it twice because I watched it once by myself,
Yeah.
and my girlfriend, who's a little bit more picky with movies than I am, um, I was like, I think she'll like this too, and she loved it. She
Oh
loved
yeah.
it. Yeah, and so it was. I watched it again with her, picked up on things I don't think I picked up on the first time, and I enjoyed it the same. And I'm talking within the same week I watched the first time, I watched it again, and I really liked it for the second time. So let's rate this movie. Let's dive
Yeah.
into the deets here. What would you rate it at 10?
I'd give it a 7.5.
Done something to you. Just tell me what I've done to you. I just don't like you no more.
I think I'd give it
Really?
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Why would you
Okay.
give it?
A 9 out of 10.
Have you been rowing?
Have you been rowing?
Have we been rowing? Well, you are rowing. It does look like we're rowing.
Oh, okay. So you thought I was gonna be higher. I
thought you'd be
enjoyed
higher.
it.
I thought it'd be
I
higher.
enjoyed it. I could watch it again. But I feel like I got out of it what it's gonna give. If I were to get more out of it, I might watch it again with like a friend or someone who's into like filming movies or something, or if I was to watch it with you. And I've enjoyed watching the YouTube talks on it for different theories. Like I listened to one theory and I was like completely convinced. I was like, this is what the meaning of the movie. And I listened to another one that was different take, and I was like,
it was like,
okay.
maybe this is it.
So
Okay, fair enough.
I like that, but this definitely isn't something that I like. Movies that make me feel a little happier somehow. I don't know.
Well, that's not the point of the movie, though.
I know. Well, even Joker,
Yeah.
where it was miserable, and like
There's slightly empowering.
there's some empowering
I
to it,
think
and
slightly
even though
empowering.
the ending is kind of like, is this real or not? It leaves you feeling kind of good. I don't know, like
It does. It does.
it's like
This one does not.
I didn't feel good
This one
after
does
this. Like this is something I
No,
had to
you
watch, like another happy thing afterwards.
Yeah.
I had to watch like a short, like 30-minute comedy or something before I went to bed, because I was like, I don't feel happy. I feel like my soul has been just fucking stomped on, you know?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to like, when you think back to different like theater and things like that, even going back to like more ancient times, like there were different shows designed for happiness, designed for comedy, for sadness,
Mm.
and this was one that was definitely designed to make you feel certain ways that are more on the tragic side for sure.
Yeah.
And it does that. And it does that very, very well. And I tell people this because I have recommended this movie to people, but I told them do not expect to feel good watching it. Don't if you don't like sad things and things that make you feel sad, don't watch it. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. This movie is not for everyone. But I think most people can come to terms that it's well acted, it's well written, and the dialogue is very, very good, even if you don't like the contents of the movie.
Editing, cinematography.
I think you could go to Ireland and shoot. Like I could probably take the videos I took of Ireland on my cell phone, and people would be like, "Whoa, it's just such a beautiful place. It is such like you don't have to do much editing really." I went to the Star Wars Island where Luke was, right?
Where Luke was.
I went there, and that's off the coast of Ireland. And I always thought in the movies this place looks so cool. It's like such a Jedi type place. Little did I realize when I went there, they did very, very little CGI for the place.
When you went to this island, you said you're on this island, right?
That island, yeah. I mean, it looks the same.
Does it have like the stone
everywhere? It's lined with the stone walls.
Things. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. People still keep their livestock in that.
Oh, cool.
Funny thing is that they do have gates now, but for a long time they didn't have gates on the stone walls. And for the doors, they'd unstack the stones in a little section of the wall, let the horse or cow or whatever go in, and then restack it to close the door.
God.
No, it's
hurry
really,
up, get it in.
Yeah.
Make sure it doesn't run out. I'm closing the door as fast as I can.
I know. It's a beautiful place. I recommend everyone go to Ireland. It's like everywhere you turn around is another beautiful green scenery. But it was definitely fun to watch this movie to see some of that.
Was there anywhere that you saw that you were like, oh, I was there?
In the movie?
Like I recognize that spot.
It's hard to say if I was on the same, because it's a little bit big. Like, I mean, you could definitely walk around it in a day or bike around it in a day. I didn't go to the whole island, but the whole island looks like that. So it's hard to say because it's literally just a maze of those walls everywhere. But there are a lot of houses there that have that thatch roof still with like the straw roof. But now there are also more modern looking houses and stuff too. So
boo.
Yeah. But I did go to a pub there, and it was like barely anybody in there. There's like one other person, and I felt that was like similar to like the pub that they always went to.
Just a sad, lonely pub.
Yeah. So
when did you go there?
Yeah.
What time of year?
September.
Oh yeah.
September.
I think
so. It kind of looked similar. It was like a very dreary kind of.
Yeah. I think I heard in an interview they said during the summer a lot of tourists go there. And it will be busy, like the pubs and stuff will be full of people, but then they leave and it's just dead again.
It is, and it depends on how the ocean is too, because they do have to take you out on a boat to get there. It's not too far. I think it was about a 45-minute boat ride to get there.
Well, we gave you our score, and we've been talking about other stuff anyways, but let's get into specifically some spoiler details about the movie. I guess just in broad strokes, the movie, it starts off with Colm telling Patrick he doesn't want to be his friend anymore. Patrick is also living with his sister, and they're living on this small island, and everyone's kind of depressed. And then Colm is ignoring him, and you're trying to figure out why.
Yeah, because like Patrick is trying to get him to go down to the pub at like 2:00.
Yeah.
Because that's like their routine, I think.
Yeah.
Any work that they do, I think it's like farm work that Patrick does.
Yeah.
And everyone goes to the pub at 2:00 and they get a pint, which is just a glass of beer. And they sit and they talk. And they talk about basically nothing because they're on an island and they're isolated and there's nothing to talk about. That's kind of the gist that at least Colm gives when he tells Patrick why he doesn't want to be friends with him anymore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like Patrick is the only one on the island. Maybe you could say Dominic too, who is this other kind of dim-witted kid that don't look totally depressed.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like, oh, it's time to go to the pub. this is life.
Yeah,
Dominic
Patrick's
and
happy.
the Powder Happy. Dominic is just kind of like he's kind of like a kid. He seems pretty happy, but they're also the two dumbest people on the island, and they make a point in the movie.
Podrick's not dumb. They make a
Powrick
point.
is a little dumb.
No, he's
He's
just
a little bit.
he's content. So he has
He is
simple
content,
needs. He's simple. I don't think he's dumb. It's just that
but he's simple. He's simple.
he's easily satisfied. He's happy with going down, seeing his friends, being around people he loves that he thinks or people who love him, and just talking about his day.
And he's happy with that.
Feckin' shit, and and like that's good enough for him. And everyone else, though, like his sister is sad that she doesn't have like a companion, like a husband or boyfriend or something. And so is Dominic, and he's also upset that his dad's abusive, and his dad's probably abusive and drunk because he's like the only cop on an island where nothing really happens. And a few of the different theories that I've seen, and what I think too, is I do think, even though Colin was saying he's not depressed, he's just trying to be doing other things now, and Podrick doesn't fit into that. I think he really is depressed, and I think he is upset that he is older. You can tell he's older than Podrick, and I think he's just upset that he hasn't done anything in life.
Yeah, he is.
And some theories I say is, the reason he stopped talking to Podrick is because, and doing these things is because he wants to alienate Podrick, and he wants Podrick then to get motivated to do his own thing, maybe leave the island and not waste his life like him. I don't know if that's entirely it. I feel like if that was it, I feel like he would have told him.
I feel like he would have
wasting your life.
I've seen that theory though. I've seen that theory, and I've also seen that, maybe we never saw any of the conversations he had before. I do think Powrick is a little slow. I think that he's not the most intelligent guy. Totally. He's I love him. I love Powrick, but I don't think he's the smartest guy. I think he's a little dull, and he just hasn't had the education that maybe Colm had, because Colm does seem cultured. He seems like he's seen a little bit more in his life. He knows how to play an instrument. He's
probably done some reading on people to know about, Mozart and blah, blah, blah.
I think Colm knows the things. He probably knows how to farm well. And I just don't think he's had the exposure to the world. So I do find him to be a little bit, I love him. I think he's a really nice guy. And people on the island also like talk about it. Like his sister kind of has to lie to him when they're talking about Dominic being like one of the dullest people on the island. And like, remember he says to her, like who's next? And she's like, doesn't matter. Why are we talking about this? Like, because he's that way, he bores Colm to death, right?
I don't know.
And because he's a little bit like that, Colm may have told him, like, you should go here. But like, I don't think Powrick would entertain that idea at all. I think he'd just be like, go right over his head, and he'd just be like, I got to go tend to my animals tomorrow morning and then come back here to the pub with my best friend, have pint, because he is so content with that life. Yeah. Albeit it's the only life he's ever known.
And for me, the thing with that theory is, he's doing these things to push Podrick, and and maybe they have had these conversations, like, you need to do something. But I think what I think it comes down to is, I think Colin is upset with how his life's turned out. He's alone, and he's old, and he's probably thinking about dying. And he does say he's thinking about dying, and he wants to leave a legacy. But I think
when he talks to the priests, he does say that.
I think he is worried about, that he wasted his life.
Totally.
And I think he is indirectly then blaming Podrick, and like kind of putting on his, like, oh, well, it's his fault that I did this, even though it's not. And I think he knows that it's not.
He does.
But I think that's what he feels. And I think it's easier for him to say, well, it's because Podrick is one who's holding me back, and now I'm just going to shut him
talking
off.
about nothing all the time. And
but the thing is,
yeah,
I
he
think
does.
he
He tells
was
the priest that. He tells. Yeah, I guess we don't know for sure if it was true
he
happiness, but
must.
he's gotten to a point in his life where who knows? Maybe he did realize he's going to die soon for some reason, right?
Yeah.
They talk about that, like, oh, did he get a diagnosis of something? Like, they never reveal that he did, right?
No, no.
But maybe he realized, oh, my time is running out. I got to do something now to make my legacy last. I mean, he's very transparent about that, and he wants it to be through music. He wants to write a song that will be there after he dies. Like that's, and he talks to the priest about how he had despair. He had despair because the priest asked him, how is that despair that you used to tell me about? And the priest, by the way, was in the Last Kingdom and in Vikings. He's the little, you remember him?
He's the boat guy.
Yeah. He's the boat guy in the Last Kingdom, and he was like the right hand man of like the first chieftain in season 1 of Vikings.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's like, how is that despair you're telling me about? And then Brendan Gleeson, calm at the end, he tells him that the despair's come back a little bit, kind of after all the events of not talking to Powerick and also the toll it's had on him. I think he at that point started cutting his fingers off, which we should get to soon, which is nuts. Talk about the movie taking a turn for the extremely bizarre. Just crazy.
But yeah, so I think he's depressed, and like you said, I think the fact that he was like, I'm going to take control of my life. I think he's probably started feeling good because he started taking control of his life, but I think he realized this is not the right way to do it. The thing is that one of the theories that I saw, and it kind of clicked in my head, but I was like, I don't know if it's just that the reason he left them was to try and make him motivated on his own. But I don't think, I think he just
try to save his life.
Yeah.
That's the theory, is to try to like make
I think it was
something
entirely selfish. I think he knew that Patrick had no interest in learning the violin or studying music. And I think he liked Patrick for being able to talk with and drink with and do those things. But I think he kind of resented that he thinks he spent too much time doing that.
Yeah, I think he feels he wasted that time. Yeah. That and it's something that seemed to click in him, which makes me wonder: did something happen in his personal life that like made that sort of that feeling come about? Like, did he something that like a diagnosis or something?
Well, the thing is, the diagnosis.
Like, shit, I gotta get this stuff down.
The diagnosis thing to me doesn't make sense because at the end he left the burning place, and that to me is like, so you do care about your life. You're acting like you don't give a shit and you're fine with dying and that everyone here is just waiting to die. But then you have a perfect chance for death to happen and you escape, And that to me shows like he's being selfish. He doesn't realize that he's being selfish. And I think the big thing is the bizarre thing that happened. So at one point, in the movie, Patrick is really confused, like the rest of us are. Like, why did this came out of nowhere just one day,
and the pain
complete
on
behavior
Charles' face just he'd sit thinking about it in his like kitchen or whatever, and there'd just be scenes of him staring with his donkey Jenny walking around, which. You just have so much compassion for Powerick because the way he treats animals and treats other people, he treats everyone with kindness, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing is everyone says he's the nicest guy on the island, and I think that's because he's the happiest one there. He's content with being there. But anyway, though, he cannot in his head, which I don't think makes him dumb. I just think. He's just not in a place like the rest of them are. He just can't understand how someone who's his friend and likes him would just stop talking to him and would do this. So he keeps trying to pursue Colm. He keeps trying to ask him why. There's a few times he stands up to him. There's a few times he's really nice to him to try and figure out why. And Colm keeps shutting him down, being cold. And eventually he meets him at the pub. And the thing is, too, it's like, I was so annoyed that Colin was like, well, are you going outside or am I going outside? It's like, this isn't your fucking pub here, Colum.
I know.
Like if you want to just play the violin in your house, and like this is more of Colum's bar than yours, man. He likes drinking and hanging out. He comes in one day and he's like, if you talk to me again, I will cut off a finger and
then I'll cut another one off for every day you talk to me after that.
yeah, and he'll do that. And it was really
like,
weird. And you're just when he said
that,
I
like
was
an
like,
Irish. Oh, this must be a common Irish like threat.
Yeah,
this must be like wordplay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was like a cultural like
something.
Thing
it's just like so bizarre.
And they kind of all look at each other like that's strange.
And to this point in the movie, it's all dialogue and like sort of normal small town kind of stuff. Like nothing weird has really happened yet.
To me, and to me, it feels like a movie that could turn into friends going through a tough time, and then having some bro moments, like to show like even though they've changed and they have different point of views, that they're still friends at heart, and then they become friends at the end. Like to me, the movie feels like still even at this point here, it feels like it could turn into that. It feels like it could turn into like a wholesome, learned a lesson kind of thing. But the thing is though, I forget what happens, but basically, Patrick goes and he talks to Colum again at some point. And Colum, you see Colum, or no, what? You just hear like a thud on the door.
Yeah.
And then Patrick goes out and he sees there's and I didn't know what the hell it was at first, even though he had said that, like I'll cut off a finger. He picks it up and it's like, what? And they reveal it later. It's a finger, and they show Colum walking away. And I was like, he must have cut off like an animal's foot or something. Like, I was like this is a warning. Like this is supposed to be symbolism because of the threat he said. But like they show his hand and he's missing a finger and he's bleeding as he's walking away. And it's like, what the feck?
Yeah. It's crazy, dude. It's
what the feck is going on here?
That was the point in the movie. It was just like, what just happened? Like this movie just changed. Like it just became surreal all of a sudden. Yeah. And then it's like now it's even harder to understand Colum. It's like you're actually and it's not just that, it's like taking away his ability to do the one thing he loves doing, which is playing the fiddle. It's like now he only has these fingers to play it with. Which and
Patrick's sister, Patrick too, who's played by Colin Farrell, greatness. His sister, I think it's Simeon. Siobhan. Okay, it's spelled really strange. It's played by Carrie Condon.
From Better Call Saul.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know she was Irish.
Everyone's great in this. Everyone's great in this. You know what, too? Actually, that guy, the guy who plays Dominic, Barry Cogan, I've so far hated him in almost everything he's in. In The Green Knight, I fucking not his acting. I don't think he's a bad actor. I hate his character and I hate how his character acts, which I think is what they hired him to do. But in this, like his character is this little weirdo, but like you love it, and like he's so good with it, and
he's so good.
He's so good with it.
We'll talk about my favorite scene of the movie later, but
I feel
Siobhan goes to.
But yeah, she talks with Colum, and she basically says what you just said is like, you're not gonna cut off your fingers. Like you love music and you love playing the violin. Like if you cut off your fingers, like you're only going to be hurting yourself. And he's just kind of like, and he even says to her at some point when they talk, and you can tell he respects her. He respects that she's smart, and the fact too, at some point, he's saying like Mozart from the 17th century music, and she comes back with he's from the 18th century. You dumb mether.
Because she reads, by the way. That's like the one thing she does is she sits at home and reads all the time, and she's isolated. She only has her brother, really.
Yeah.
So it's like.
So she. Yeah. You can tell he respects her. So they have some conversations throughout the movie. And he's like, you're just waiting to die here, or something like that. Like he says something along those lines, and you're just like, Like, so what is it, Colin? Like, do you want to live your life and do better things, or do you want to die? Like, I don't understand. So to me, I just feel like, as intentionally vague as he is with Colin, and the fact that he essentially cuts off his nose despite his face, right? Like, he cuts off his fingers that he's saying he wants to play music with, despite his best friend for talking with him and trying to understand what's going on. To me, just shows, like, just like so much like confusion in him, that he feels like he wants to like take control of his life and be assertive and do these new things, and he wants to then make this dramatic threat and to scare Colum, because he knows Colum doesn't, or he knows Patrick doesn't want Colum to be hurt or injured. So maybe that'll make him stop. But at the same time, he's trying to make him stop talking to him. But doing this is going to make Patrick worry more about him, because he's a nice guy who cares about his friend.
Like, he's a good friend, and he's like, oh, I need to help my friend in these times. It's kind of like, his reaction to most of this. He's like, he'll like feel like the first thing he thought, it was like on April Fool's Day was the first time. The first day he stopped was April 1st. He's like, oh, this is all a joke. And he went and he confronted. He was like, oh, good joke. And then like,
he's like, oh, I just saw the month.
Just saw it. Yeah.
He's like, what?
After that, he'd like think about it, because this is when this started happening. Powrick, this is all he'd think about 100% of the time in his life. Then was, why is my best friend not want to talk to me? Like, he sits at home thinking about it. When he's walking to town, he's thinking about it. Like, that's it. He asks everyone about it. Like, but Calm also, the thing that's interesting with Calm is, as mean as he is to Powrick, as mean as he is, there's a scene where Powrick gets beat up by the police officer. And who's there to come help pick him up and give him a ride part of the way home is Calm. He still cares enough about him to do something like that nice for him. Because you'd think if he truly hated Powrick, he would have like left him there, and he'd walked by. Or to me, that was a very interesting scene, because he even he doesn't talk to him the whole way. And this scene almost it just gives me, thinking about it, it just gives me a knot in my stomach, because like Powrick just starts bawling his eyes out on their ride back, because he knows Calm doesn't want him to talk to him, and Calm's not starting a conversation. And when Calm gets off to leave,
that they're like in this place in their relationship.
Exactly.
Too,
and he just breaks down in front of him, and Calm doesn't do anything. He actually stops the cart. This is a really interesting detail, I thought, is he hands Powrick the reins, and he like taps his hands and then gets out. Like a caring sort of like
down a fork in the road.
Yeah. And it's like a caring little tap, as if like to say like, hang in there or something. There's something to that. You know what I mean? That showed a little bit of compassion to Powrick, which mixed signals a little bit.
That's why it's the fact that he doesn't know like all the mixed signals he's sending, to me is also very frustrating. Like, because him just giving this very vague answer is going to make him question more. And he says, you're boring and blah, blah, blah. But Patrick's even like, well, you liked me yesterday. He's like, well, did I? And it's like you had to have liked him to some degree. If this guy is this attached
I guess,
to you.
But I mean, how many choices of friends do you have? Like, you have the choice of the cop, who is an absolute piece of shit because he beats and does other things to his son, and he's a terrible cop. And you have Powrick. Those are like the two constants that go to the pub, besides the guy who works at the pub. So I mean, like, there's not a whole heck of a lot of options for friends on the island anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I still feel like, as attached as Patrick is, like they had to have been friends, Yeah. And I think he even acknowledges that. He's just like, I don't like you anymore. So he must have. So him saying anymore to me still says he must have liked him at some point. Yeah,
and the fact that he does those little things, like he cares. And when the most tragic thing that happens in this movie is eventually he cuts off all 5 of his fingers. because he instead of the first threat, he's like, I'll cut one off each day you talk to me. And then like he went all in. He was just like, okay, you know what? I actually cut one off. Next time I'm going to cut off all of them. That's my threat. Very serious threat. And of course, throughout the whole movie, we talked about Jenny the donkey, who you fall in love with. It's like one of the best actors with the
It is
best
a real.
performances.
She's
of the
like a
movie.
character in the movie.
She
though.
is. She's got a personality. She like lets herself in the house. She's like always looking on the table. She comes to Powrick whenever he's sad, and she basically like comforts him. She goes a lot of different places with Powrick around the island. Like she walks with him to the pub and stuff, and he treats Jenny like a human, basically.
Yeah, he does.
And like his sister hates it. Siobhan's like, no, not in the house, and he like just like, yes, in the house. Like, and it's funny.
She's
Later
lonely.
when Siobhan leaves, later we'll get to it. When Siobhan leaves, like then all of the animals are in the house.
The horses,
but
everything.
that just goes to show,
in.
like his character is so loving. You know,
Yeah,
it's just
he's like, well, they're lonely. Like, I will make them feel better by seeing them.
Yeah. So anyway, later on, Powrick, this is one of those points in the movie where it's like, oh, this movie can't get any worse for Powrick.
His sister just left, and
his sister just left him to go to the mainland to start a new life.
Best friend,
which was
being
very
a dick.
difficult for her to do.
His sister just left.
All of a sudden, the four fingers hit the door again. But he wasn't home, I don't think, at the time. He was down seeing his sister off. And sure enough, Jenny choked on one of those fingers, sadly, and died. And the reason I got to this, and this was so devastating, because we all love Jenny. And this really changed Powrick. This truly changed Powrick. I think this pushed him over the edge to do something crazy. He goes and confronts Colm and tells him what happened. And Colm he's like very upset that this happened. He did not want anything bad to happen to Jenny, and he knows what Jenny meant to Powrick. And he's like a little bit devastated, I think, that like he killed the donkey. He really hits him, affects him. He even like talks to the priest about it. Like Colm or Powrick, actually, that's when he threatens, or he says, I'm going to burn your house down. He said, and I don't care if you're, which was one of the craziest fucking. Oh, okay, this is crazy.
At the beginning of the movie, I like the point where he's like, I don't like you anymore. I don't want to be your friend. I text Colby and I'm like, if you ever call me, I'll burn your house down. And I haven't seen the trailer or anything.
And because you would text me, I'm starting to watch the movie now, basically. And like 5 minutes into the movie, you texted me that. And I was like, okay, he must have seen a trailer. Because I told Ani, I said, look what Steve just texted me. Like, that's crazy. And she's like, oh, did he see a trailer or something? I was like, maybe he saw a trailer. Anyway, I wasn't going to ask you if you saw a trailer because it'd spoil the movie, just in case. But I was going to ask you after. And then you already texted me after, like, dude, I had no idea about the house burning down.
I'm glad you didn't, because, like I said, I honestly thought the movie might go the wholesome route up until the fingers hit the second door. Then I was like,
hit the fan. Right. Fingers hit the door.
The fingers hit the fucking fan. Another thing too about Colm, I think Colm, his best friend Patrick was clearly, obviously, the only guy on the island who wasn't feeling this depression that everyone else is feeling. And I feel like he couldn't relate to him on that. And I think part of the reason he did all this shit was to try and make him sad so they could relate. And to me, I don't know if this is a theory or not. Like, anytime he says Patrick is interesting, is what he says, is when Patrick is being mean and assertive to him. And it's like, and at first it's just like, oh, he just wants him to be more assertive. But then when Colm is just being assertive and then also being nice and being interested, he doesn't care. Because I think he sees that spark in Colm or in Patrick again, and he's like, oh, he's happy. Like, this guy's just happy.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't get my pain and stuff. So I think, I don't think he meant to kill the donkey or anything, but I think what he did want to do is make Powrick feel as bad as he can, or at least be able to relate to that. And I think he likes that. I think he wanted to be able to talk about feeling like shit.
Totally.
And because it almost seems like he likes him more at the end when he's mad, sad, and says like I'll kill you, like you've done unforgivable things. And you can tell he's changed. He's done little things, like he did something.
Yeah.
He
So he
made this one guy
lied.
leave the island, which
He lied to this guy that
was
was
funny.
actually, yeah. So this guy befriended Colm, was writing the song with Colm, and sort of out of spite, Powrick lies to him and tells him that a mail truck hit his mom,
Yeah,
or something.
he's
and
like, a
that
mail
you need
truck
to go
ran
to
over
the
your mom.
mainland. And he's like, that's impossible. And Powrick's like, really? And the guy's like, yeah, because a mail truck killed my dad or something.
He's like, no, it happens all the time. And he's like,
Oh,
I know, it killed me, daddy.
Yeah, yeah. That was funny. There's always that's a little charming Irish humor, like just sprinkled throughout the film, even though sad events were happening, like just constantly, like little clever lines here and there that just make you chuckle.
Yeah.
It was brilliantly written. The dialogue was fantastic. You're rowing.
Yeah,
You and him rowing.
That's something. Again, at the beginning, like little things like that made me think maybe this will be like a sort of like a comedy, wholesome thing too. But
Yeah.
He's like, "Are you rowing?" I don't know if we're rowing. It seems like you're
I don't
rowing.
think we're rowing.
And
It does seem like we're rowing.
It does seem like we're rowing. I better go see what's going on. You better see what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, he kills the donkey though.
He kills, inadvertently.
Yeah. And
Powrick goes over the ledge and he says, like, I'm gonna burn your house down tomorrow at 2:00 or something. Whether you're in it or not, I don't care.
He's like, leave your dog outside though. I wouldn't do that.
Leave your dog. And that's what's interesting about this part, because like Powrick actually does it. And he doesn't look to see if he's inside it at first.
No, he sets it ablaze.
He just
first.
stacks the sticks. He sets it ablaze. He made sure the dog was already outside.
Mm-hmm.
He takes the dog because he cares. Like I will take care of your dog. Like, that's who he is. And deep down, I think that's like the symbol of who he is deep down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he can't help but go back and look after he sets the place ablaze.
But he sees he's in there.
Colm's just sitting there.
And he goes.
And anyway. I thought he was going to break in. I thought he was going to like break in and drag him out. No, he rides away. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit. Colm dragged him down to this level. He basically just committed murder. I mean, later we found out that Colm like threw a chair through the window and climbed out. But
yeah, they don't show how he got out or anything though. But
they show a chair. They do show
did?
a chair that's like not burnt that much, thrown out the window. So okay. I think that's how he did it. But it's like, goddamn. It's such a weird thing. Like he's murdering him, but he's also like taking care of his dog. He's like,
I think he still inside wants to be a nice person, but I mean, the things that were making him happy was having a friend, having a sister, having the animals, and so his best friend's being an ass. His sister left, and one of his animals, who's like a friend to him, just died. So it's like. Yeah. Now he's miserable like the rest of you, And
you've dragged him down to this level, and the other one too. I think this is a good segue into Dominic, because this was not the main storyline of the movie, but it really hit me at the end. Earlier in the movie, Dominic always sort of casually asks Powrick about his sister, like, is she single? Is she seeing anyone? And then like they'd get together, and he'd always like tell her she was pretty and stuff, and like, but it just seems so innocent. Like he's a kid, and
it seemed like he flirted with anyone. Like I love one of the parts when he goes to the bar.
Yeah,
he's like, "Is there any pretty girls in here?" And or any girls in here? And like, and like the bartender's like, "Don't you be bothering any of them?" And he's like, "There's pretty ones."
Him and Powrick have a fight later in the movie, because Powrick tells Dominic about how
he got that guy to leave. He lied.
He got that guy to leave, and Dominic looks at him like, "You were the only nice one on this island."
He's like,
and now nobody. Now there's no one. Yeah. He's like, "This is the meanest thing I've ever heard." And like, I thought you were the nice one on this island. And that's why he kept going to him. Because all Dominic knows really is he gets beat by his dad, and he's kind of getting treated by shit by everyone else on the island who looks really low on him. They look at him as like kind of the scum of the island, really. That's how like everyone talks about him. This starts the scene that I think is the best scene in the movie. And it's when Dominic goes to talk to Siobhan. So Siobhan's standing at a lake.
Oh,
and she looks across the lake.
Creepy. We'll talk more about
and
this.
We'll talk. Yeah. So throughout the movie, also, we should establish there's this old lady always dressed in black. And she always seemed sort of clairvoyant, really creepy, and really wacky. And they always hid from her behind stone walls, which was funny. Like they never want to like encounter her. And at one point in the movie, she was like, she's like, one person's going to die. Maybe two people are going to die. It's like, oh, okay. This is kind of a weird foreshadowing here. Anyway, at that scene where Siobhan's standing at the lake, and this is right before like her decision to leave the island. I think she made the decision and she was upset that she was going to be leaving her brother because she knows that it's going to be devastating for him. And the old lady is on the other side of the river looking in her direction, doing like, come here, like across the water, like what? Also, earlier in the movie, the police officer went to the mailroom where the gossiping mail lady was, who always opens people's letters and reads, and she always asks for the news. And he said that someone was found dead in the lake, and that the idiot, like, or the fool, walked into the lake and drowned, or something like that. And you don't think much of that now. It's just like random piece of information earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Dominic approaches Siobhan, like, and all shy and stuff, timid, goes like, you don't suppose that you and I'd ever, get together. And she's like,
you never thought about loving a boy like me, or something like that.
Yeah. It's kind of sweet,
It's
kind of sweet. And she's nice to him, and she's like, no, like, I don't think so, Dominic. And he's like, oh, and he's like, no, I didn't think so. Not even when I'm your age. And she's, again, polite, but it's like, no, I don't think so. And he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go do that thing I was going to go do over here. Which is like, when you watch it the first time, you're kind of like, he's doing something stupid.
Yeah, I thought he was saying, like, I'm going to basically like make an excuse to get out of this awkward situation.
Yeah, like I happen to be in the same place as you. Oh, I'm gonna go do that thing I was gonna do. I was over here. That's why I'm in the same vicinity. Like, we later find out in the end of the movie, Howrick killed himself in that lake.
Well, we don't 100% know. We didn't see what happened, but he's in the lake, dead.
Right.
And
I think
there's no like.
I think you got to jump to the conclusion a little bit.
And it's like, if you can't swim like that little bit, like there's no like steep cliffs that go into the lake. So it's not like you can fall into the lake unless you're like completely unconscious. I don't see how even someone who can't swim couldn't like reach down, touch the ledge of the lake, or doggy paddle enough to touch the bottom and then make it out, like. So yeah, I do think he killed himself, but they do kind of leave it open.
They leave it open, but like they also foreshadowed it earlier that the other person killed himself in that lake. It's a little irony because his dad was like making fun of the person who died in the lake earlier, and now his own son. But now when you look at that scene again, you realize, wow, Dominic just like the woman that he loves, like the woman he has a crush on, basically told him, never in your wildest dreams is this ever going to happen. So like all hope he had for that, gone. And the one little piece of hope of like niceness he had on the island, because this was immediately after that conversation he had with Pádraig. And all of a sudden, I think he felt totally alone.
Yeah.
Because he would always go to Pádraig. He'd like want to stay at their house when his dad would beat him and stuff. And they were like the only people who were nice to him on the island. And all of a sudden, it's really deep. It's really fucking deep. And then now when you look back at the old lady waving, now I see her. Was she waving Dominic in? Was like Dominic like in the back behind Siobhan?
She was just trying to get anyone she could.
Anyone she could. So now I think I interpret it now that she was like summoning Dominic in, and now at the end of the movie we see that she is sort of the banshee, And if you don't know what a banshee, that's part of Gaelic folklore. And it's like a spirit of a woman who like wails, basically. She either like it's either their appearance or they'll like wail, and it will like summon death, or it'll predict death. It'll be basically an omen of death. And that's the folklore. It's the Irish folklore. So banshees are part of that. And she is kind of the banshee of this movie because she predicted death, and it happens. So
let's since we're talking about the old lady, let's just talk about the old lady here now too. I think the old lady was pretty interesting too, and even she, I picked up on the banshee thing. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, she's the one symbolic of death and things like, and she was one saying like, oh, two people will die today, one person would, and that would happen. It wouldn't be the person you would think. Like at first you're like, oh, Colum's gonna die, but it turns out it's Dominic who died. And it wasn't like you thought. Maybe Powrick is gonna die, but it was the donkey who died. Yeah, but anyway, though, the beginning of the movie, she just seems like she's some old lady. Again, the beginning of the movie feels like it could just be two friends who are fighting, and then the second half of the movie is they learn each other's ways and become friends in a new way. And to me, I thought like the old lady might be like sort of like a comic relief. There's the old lady trying to avoid her.
Yeah.
And she's sitting in the house in Powrick's house talking with his sister, and like it's kind of funny when Powrick is like trying to avoid her and things, and like, oh, she's fucking creepy. But as it turns, like she's making these prophecies and people are dying, and then now she's like waving people into the lake. This is after the finger stuff, and now it's like she's going like through the night, like when it's misty and scary, and like she's clearly now like it went from like, oh, is she an old lady who like kind of knows things and is wise about friendships, to like this is an otherworldly creature who's like haunting this island. Yeah.
And if you want to go even deeper into the symbolism, early in the movie, Dominic finds some fishing hook. She ends up with that fishing hook and is like always holding it by the end of the movie. And that kind of resembles, she's always wearing like a black hood with that fishing hook in one hand. Sort of resembles the Grim Reaper as well.
Then
which is kind of interesting.
Colum describes, he talks about the song he wrote when Powrick came to visit him before he chopped off his other four fingers. He says the song he wrote is called "The Banshees of Inisherin."
Inisherin.
In Ed Sheeran, the Banshees of Ed Sheeran, and he's like, "But there's no banshees on the island, or there never was any banshees." And he's like, "I know, but I think, or maybe they are, but I think banshees, they don't haunt us and do things like they used to. They just sit back and watch." And
they do, yeah.
And that's what the old lady is doing at the end of the movie. Especially she's just sitting on the chair at Colum's house when Powrick goes down, and this is where the movie ends, when he goes down and confronts Colum and basically tells him, and again, you're thinking maybe this will be some sort of wholesome moment or something. And to me, it almost seems like Colum likes Powrick now, for doing it.
Somewhat.
He even gives him like gratitude at the end. He's like, thanks for taking care of my dog. He the whole time when Powrick's doing all these nice things for him, he doesn't acknowledge he's doing nice things for him. And that's the thing. Powrick, he's nice, and he wants people to acknowledge that he did little nice things.
It's so interesting because he's still mad at Powrick's still mad at him in that last scene, and he's still very abrasive with him. And when he says thank you for taking care of my dog, he's like, anytime. It's like, because that's who that's who he is. He is a nice person deep down. And it's like,
but you can also see now he's broken, man, and
he's broken.
He says,
he's broken.
You're still alive. You left the house. Like, this isn't over. Because like Colum, I think Colum never thought it would, like, Powrick would be this much to him, even though he's being a complete psycho himself, cutting off his fingers and throwing it. I don't think he ever thought Powrick would ever go this low. And I think he thinks, oh, it's over now. I got out of my house. I'm alive. We can talk about this. I feel bad about his donkey. You know, maybe he's thinking about like I should have handled this differently.
Yeah.
But Powerk doesn't give it a feckin' shit now.
No.
He's like,
You
it's not over.
fecked it up.
You fecked it up, and he says, um, like some things can't be forgiven, and some things shouldn't be, and
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean, so like, I'm with, I'm like 100% in Powerk's boat. Like this was just crazy,
yeah.
but like
Totally.
it's also like you feel bad, and you feel bad that he feels that way now.
Mm-hmm. It's
Because that's
tragic.
not who he was, and
It's tragic. Everything about it. It's like,
and I think you pointed
he's
this out to me too,
yeah.
like the symbolism. Because I was wondering like why is it set in this time period, you know? And you brought up how it's supposed to reflect.
Well, they're
the Irish
literally
Civil War.
watching the Irish Civil War happen over the channel there. They're like watching the explosions happen, and they talk about the Irish Civil War several times through the movie. And in the Irish Civil War, it was brothers killing brothers, and you know, somewhat senselessly. And so that's kind of what it seems like. This seems like a senseless end of a friendship.
Yeah,
is what it feels like. You get his. I mean, you hear his reasonings, but I can't understand why you'd still treat him so badly. You know, if you want to distance yourself from someone, okay, that's one thing. But to like totally like cold turkey cut them off and then like
expect them not to wonder why.
Yeah, it just was not handled well by Colm at all.
No.
And
that's the thing that makes me sure. Like he wanted to somehow break Powerk. And I don't think it's because he wanted to hurt his friend. I just think he wanted his friend to also feel like he does. Shitty.
The misery that he does, the despair that he feels.
So he could maybe relate to him and be friends with him. Because that's every time he's like, he's interesting now. It's like when
he resents him for the sort of happy-go-lucky life that
I think so.
Podrick leads. Yeah, that Powerk leads. That could be it.
That's what I think.
He's envious of how can you feel so happy on this such a depressing island. I'm not going to lie to you. When I went to that island, it did feel like, oh, this would be a depressing place to grow up. It's so empty. It was like, you know, there was a playground. There was like one kid playing on it when I was there, and their mom watching it. It just felt so. The people were so nice there and everything, but I would not like to live here. I thought to myself, I thought it was beautiful. It was a beautiful place, but I think I would go crazy if I lived there. And it seems like these people on this island go, and I think maybe that's a little bit into it too, is that isolation makes you go mad. And I mean, on the island, they're all isolated. His sister's isolated, and she goes and she writes that she's living a great life now, and I have an extra room for you, Powerk. Come live with me. And he doesn't.
I know. I
He's
wish
like
he would
tied to that island. I know.
And this is part of the movie where I'm just like he just walks away, and I would have almost preferred that Colm died. You know, that to me would have gave me like some sort of closure. I would have preferred if one of them died and maybe felt bad, and even if they didn't like cry about it, like you see some moment where they reflect and like that, like thinking like this was out of hand.
Totally.
I thought for sure that Powerk was going to die. I thought he might kill himself or something was going to happen to him that would make Colm go like, oh shit, I should have been a good friend to him. Why did I do this to him? And then I thought maybe Colm will die and maybe Powerk will leave, or I don't know. Or I thought maybe last minute they will somehow become friends. Maybe it'll still do the wholesome ending that I thought it would.
Yeah, and he'll like the last line of the movie is Colm saying to Powerk is like, "You want to go down for a pint?"
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah.
And then it was all for nothing. All that shit, like they're just back where they started. They're just talking about nothing.
But it didn't do that. He just he leaves that ominous threat like it's not done because you're still alive, mother fecker, and he just
killed
walks
Jenny.
away. He killed Jenny.
Killed Jenny.
Yeah, and we just zoom out and we see the old lady just sitting up on the hill. But I guess one of the things too, like what we were mentioning with the the Civil War. I never understood, and maybe I just don't remember what the Irish Civil War was about. But even one of the people that YouTube channels that I had watched that was giving thing, and they had talked about it after you'd brought it up to me, was that like they grew up in Ireland and was in history class, and they weren't entirely sure what it was about. So I think that was probably the point of why it was set during that time period.
Yeah,
was just
it's like a vague metaphor. It's like a little vague metaphor for that, for the war, and because it just seems senseless, and nobody involved really had a complete understanding of what was happening. Even Calm like was confused inside of what was going on.
Yeah, to me,
obviously Powerrick was super confused the whole movie. Like, and let's just talk just for a second about Colin Farrell. Now, everyone in this movie was fantastic. Colin Farrell is nominated for Best Actor, and if he doesn't win, I have to hear who the winner is. But he's definitely deserved the nomination, and his facial expressions, to how he expressed his pain, how he expressed his confusion, was one of the best acting performances I've seen in a long time.
Or the moments when you would see hope in his eyes, or like
concern
for his friend, or like the time he got drunk and he had that
and
sort
he
of like
stood
monologue.
up for himself.
He's like,
that was great. That was a great
maybe
moment.
you were never nice. He's like, God, maybe you were never like. I love that scene because it's like kind of like
a great scene. And like and even Brendan Gleeson on the other end of that scene also for the first time is looking at Calm or at Powerrick with like I'm interested in you. I'm arguing with you right now, but I'm like he actually had some interest in like communicating with him there, and it was just like you talked about earlier how he likes him when he's like that. He even said in the beginning of the movie, actually prefer him when he's drunk. But then the other guy we have to just give major props to is Barry. I don't know how to say his last name, Kagan or whatever. It might be an Irish pronunciation, but Dominic.
Oh yeah.
And I think we already gave him props, but my God, what a performance!
Yeah, there was a lot of subtle things when you're watching him act and do things. You don't pick up. You don't like go like, oh, that little thing he did makes me think that that's a subtle nod to his dad and emotional physical abuse. But like if you watch, I watched some video, but he was just convincing and making you feel all the things he was supposed to do. You don't realize like, oh, it's this. But when I watched the video about like all the little things he was doing in that role, I was like, damn, yeah, like this all seems. Maybe it was just natural for the actor to do that, but it some of it had to be like conscious thought. But it feels natural. Like it doesn't feel like he's trying to sell you on something. It's just you just feel like, yeah, that's the emotion he feels.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of him though, was your favorite scene when they go in to get his dad's whiskey? There's the dad, the policeman. They go in and he's like, go get some whiskey because they're going to sit out and talk about what the heck's going on. And he's just naked in a rocking chair, passed out.
Yeah.
And and you can tell Powerrick was not signed up to see this. And and he's just like
it's funny. He's like,
oh, Bunchel. Just look at him.
Yeah. You don't want him to catch you when he's wanking. Oh my God. That was funny. But yeah, really, really good movie overall. The acting again was phenomenal. The music was good. Really top-notch film.
I enjoyed it. It just made me feel sad. And
it made me feel sad. It totally made me feel sad, yet I wanted to watch it again. It's such a weird thing. And I think that's what makes it such a good movie is like, I don't want to feel sad. And movies I don't think last with me that much. Like I feel sad while I watch it and experience those emotions, but I don't necessarily personally don't need to watch something afterward. Like I don't feel like I need to. It's just the way I'm wired. I'm fine.
Cold-blooded man.
Cold-blooded.
Just like Colin. Exactly. I'm Powerrick and you're Colin 100%. That's this. That's this.
No. I if anything, I'm Jenny. Come on now. That's who I want to be in this. Jenny was always there. Jenny was awesome. Loved this movie personally. recommend it if you don't mind feeling a little sad for a little bit. If you appreciate good acting, good dialogue.
Well, I guess what are you, I've kind of said my thoughts. I really think that Colum was depressed just like everyone else, and he sort of resented Powrick for that. And I think he also wanted to bring him down to his level. I don't think it was like necessarily a conscious thought, but I think that's what he was. That's what he was. I don't think he was like, I plan on doing this terrible thing to him to bring him down. But I think he was like, I just want to hurt him. I just want him to feel bad like me. Is what I think. I think that's the real reason that the whole I want to stop being your friend thing. Because he still went to the same pub that he knew Colin was going to, you know.
It's the only place to go.
But I mean, still, like, really, if he wanted to practice his fiddle group, he could have done that in his house or one of those other people. And again, he cuts off all of his fingers, and it's such a ridiculous scene. He's just cut off all his fingers, and he's like directing all of them as they like go, and he's like losing blood. I was like, this is like, you're clearly out of your mind,
crazy.
Like, and it's
he
like,
is. I think he is crazy. I think he's an old man who's panicked here at the end of life, and like he does want to leave that thing that lasts. He wants to be remembered. He has that sense of pride in himself that he wants to be like some little piece of music with his name on it, so somebody can. He just had a little piece of him to live on, because it doesn't seem like he has any family.
So I guess what I'm getting at is why. What do you think the real reason is he told, and he started acting this way to Powrick when he told him, I don't like you anymore. And he starts acting the way he does. What do you think it is?
I do think it's because like he's panicking at the end of his life, and he wants to spend all of his time he has left doing meaningful things to him. And I think that all of a sudden he just resents the meaningless conversations that he used to have. Like I really think something might have happened, or even if it's just he realized how close he is to death. He just doesn't have much time left. His body is maybe starting to fail him. He doesn't want to waste time with Powrick. Because the thing that's crazy is he still cares about him. He cared about him when he got beat up. You know, he does care about him, but he doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. I do think it was more selfish than it was. I have seen the theories about him wanting Powrick to be inspired to be a better person or whatever. And this was like the tough love way of doing it. I don't think I totally buy that.
No,
I don't think I totally buy that.
I
think it's I even think it may be a phase he's going through, and that if this movie kept going, that I think maybe he gets over it. And I think we call it in that phase, and I think it's just a metaphor. The movie is just like, be nice to people, you know, like that's like the message. It's like you should be kind, because if you're mean to people, it's contagious. And if you're going to be mean to someone like that, you're going to make them mean. And I think there's some truth to that, you know. I think that if you're constantly exposed to like that kind of negative behavior, it can become contagious, unfortunately, and vice versa, you know. I think I do think it was more selfish than righteous or anything like that. So
do I. Yeah, I don't buy the thing where it's like he's trying to motivate. I think it's a cool theory, but I don't buy it.
That's
Banshees of
Inisherin. Tell us your theories.
Ed Sheeran.
Please tell us your theories, and tell us if you like the movie.
Why do you think he did it? Why do you think they stopped?
Why do you think he did it?
And tell us what you think about the symbolism and anything you read into it that
anything we missed. Yeah, I'd love to hear different theories about it, because I love movies like that where you can interpret it in different ways.
Or if you can clear up the Irish Civil War for us, you know, in like a couple sentences, you know, make it complex, you know,
concise
national issue, very concise in a YouTube comment for us or a podcast comment.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. Anyway, we hope that you enjoyed this. We hope that you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll be coming out with more of the movies that we like and the shows that we like to watch, recapping it. Absolutely. Otherwise, for now,
go the heck him.
Get the feck him.
Get the feck out this podcast.
Get the feck.
Well, it's like we always fecking say.
Goodbye.